Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us today for Manning & Napier's webinar, A Life in a Day of an Owner-Only Business, which is part 2 of a 2-part series on qualified plans for owner-only businesses. My name is Chris LaBounty, Advisor Consultant at Manning & Napier, and I'll serve as your moderator. As you can imagine, we're all working remotely and we're doing our best to minimize disruptions, but we do want to apologize in advance for any outside noise. Before we get started, we have a few housekeeping items. All call participants have been muted, but if you have questions, and we hope you do, please submit them during and after the webinar using the box on the bottom right of your screen. When we conclude the presentation, we will spend our remaining time answering as many listener questions as we can. Additionally, we have a series of polling questions throughout the presentation. We're excited to be speaking with you today about how qualified plans for owner-only businesses represent a fast-growing opportunity for your advisory practice. Our speaker today is James Esposito, a qualified plans consultant at Manning & Napier. In this role, he assists advisors, third-party administrators, and plan sponsors by providing retirement plan design expertise to better address plan goals and objectives. He has successfully helped advisors expand their book of business to include cash balance plan clients. James also provides plan document and governance reviews to ensure overall compliance within an increasingly complex body of rules and regulations. He has also spent nearly 20 years working in the qualified plans arena, performing defined benefit and defined contribution plan administration and consulting. Before I turn it over to James, I'm going to briefly review our last session and provide you an overview of today's agenda. So last week we discussed what an owner-only plan definition is, common business structure types that fit into the owner-only bucket. We also defined net earned income and also talked about how to calculate or find that when you're working with your clients and prospects. And lastly, we walked through the different types of applicable plans for owner-only businesses. And for today, we are going to walk you through some idealized scenarios. We're going to give you some details around a specific business and talk through how a qualified plan design might fit for each of these business types. And so we'll start with our first polling question, and we're going to see, do you have similarly situated clients right now? So just this is an easy softball here, yes or no? Do you have any owner-only clients in your book of business currently? And I'll just wait a couple seconds here as we get the results before I kick it over to James to start. I'm starting to see some data come in here. I'll just give it another second. And I think that's just about everybody. I think we can post the results now. So it seems obviously here the majority of the folks on this call do have some owner-only clients in their current book of business already. So that's good news. That's a good place to start. So I'll turn it over to James now to get going on our first scenario. So please take it away.
Thank you, Chris. And greetings, everyone, one and all. Before I start, I do want to mention that we are, as you just noticed, using polling questions, but I'm also going to try to ask you guys to use the chat function every once in a while. That's keyboard chat. That's not microphone chat because you're all muted. But you know, when I signal as such with a question, you'll have an opportunity to chat what you think the answer might be. So again, thank you all for attending. We're going to start today with a story about a young sole proprietor named Vera. Vera operates a courier service. Vera is 35 years old, all right? And Vera has decided to start a sole proprietorship. At this point, Vera is young, would like to remain mobile, and there's not a lot of liability that she can't insure with a, simple property casualty situation. So the sole proprietorship works perfectly for Vera. And I'll tell you a little bit about Vera. And started the business about 5 years ago. And this year, Vera expects a net profit of $50,000. And oh, by the way, over the last 3 years, that's just about what Vera's done in terms of net profit, just about a 3-year average net profit of $50,000. Now, remember from last session, net profit is generally greater than net earned income for qualified plan purposes. So you are let me tell you something about Vera. Vera's a hustler, okay? She is like a full-on pedal to the metal, greenback hustle. And you sort of recognize that in Vera. Frankly, you'd like her to work for you, but that's not going to happen. So let's see what kind of work we can do for Vera. And the very first thing I'm going to throw out to our ABLE advisory audience is, what do you think is the ideal retirement plan for Vera? Remember, up here we talked young, mobile, want to retain flexibility, want to retain discretion. Anybody want to throw out what they think might be the ideal plan for Vera at this stage of the business? Hopefully we're not getting crickets. Anything, Chris?
I'm not seeing anything come across, but I'm gonna venture to guess that it would be a SEP, maybe.
Yeah, I think the SEP is the ideal retirement plan for Vera. Simplified employee pension, profit sharing plan would work too, but the SEP has no admin cost associated with it, no administration costs associated with it. Profit sharing plan typically involves a service provider called a third-party administrator. Vera really doesn't need that at this point. The SEP will fit the bill. Contributions are totally discretionary, all right? Vera can contribute up to 25% of net earned income or $58,000, the lesser of those two. So let me rephrase that. Vera can contribute the lesser of 25% of net earned income or $58,000. But remember that 25% of net earned income really means about 18.5 to 19% of net profit. So let's ask the question, how much can Vera save in a SEP? Well, the maximum would be about 18.6% of her net profit. All right, so to figure that out, simply multiply the $50,000 net profit by your 0.186, and you come to a maximum SEP contribution of about $9,300, okay? In addition to that, Vera can also make a non-deductible IRA contribution. That's up to $6,000. All right. Now, think about this, gang. Vera's got $50,000 to work with. All right. If Vera lives in Manhattan, Vera's not likely to make a $9,300 contribution. If Vera lives in Boise, maybe that $9,300 is something Vera can handle and some additional in a non-deductible IRA. But the point is that after the plan contribution, Vera needs money for milk and postage stamps, okay? And as net earnings increase, so can allowable SEP contributions. So a lot of flexibility with the SEP. It's a great place for Vera to start. And let me ask you this, what net profit would Vera need to reach the $58,000 maximum? In other words, how much net profit will enable Vera to put away $58,000? And the answer is simply divide, I gave you the rule of thumb, divide $58,000 by 19 or so percent, and you come up with roughly $303,000. That shouldn't really say equal, that should say approximately. Sorry about that, folks. But similar to the net earned income analysis, I'm circling it right here at the bottom of the slide, that we went through last time. If you start with that rough $300,000 of net earnings and you subtract out the self-employment taxes of roughly $13,000 or so, and then you subtract out the plan contribution of $58,000, you're left with a net earned income for plan purposes, $232,000. You can check that by multiplying by 25%, and you get that $58,000 maximum that we spoke of. I'm going through this exercise because I want you to remember this number right here, this $232,000. So SEP is the ideal plan for Vera at this point. Provides flexibility, discretion. Vera doesn't have to make any contributions until needed or wanted, and there's no admin costs, so totally flexible. But life goes on, and in the blink of a slide, Vera is now 40. That's actually the progenesis of the title of our session today. In other words, we started out with a day in the life. But then we realized that we just aged Vera 5 years in the span of a slide, and we figured, wow, that really is horrible for Vera. It should probably be more like a life in the day of an owner-only business. That's how it started. But anyway, you don't care. In any event, 5 years down the road, Vera's age 40. And over that time, Vera switched to an S corporation, found a niche delivering some higher end items that posed some increased liability. And the corporate structure was perfect way for Vera to insulate her personal assets from, any liability associated with the business. So, in summary of what's been going on, going strong for 10 years now. And finally, in 2021, Vera expects her first big jump in income, $175,000 in earnings for 2021. Vera went the S Corp route. And remember from last session, with S corporations, they're special. They have flexibility to vary their W-2 and their dividend income as needed. All right. And over the last 3 years, Vera's average net earned income, now we're in a corporate situation. So notice how I'm using that phrase net earned income versus W-2 or net profit for the past average. But that average has increased from 50 to 75,000. So we're starting to see a pattern with Vera. Remember, Vera is a hustler, and Vera is going to do nothing but succeed. So either the SEP or the profit sharing plan will still work for Vera. Contributions are still discretionary, and the limit is still up to the $58,000. But the issue is that, remember, I told you to remember that $232,000 figure. Vera needs a W-2 of $232,000 to max out at $58,000 into the plan. Vera doesn't have $232,000 to work with. Remember on the last slide, I told you Vera only has $175,000 to work with. So is the SEP still the ideal plan for Vera? I'm going to do one more chat before I give up on y'all. Hopefully we can get some answers. Is the SEP still the idea plan for Vera? One, and is there a way maybe to get Vera closer to a $58,000 contribution with a minimal or lower W-2 than $232,000? What do you guys think?
And as a reminder, the chat box is on the bottom right of your screen if you'd like to chime in.
Tell us what you think.
I've got a couple. I had one person mention a solo K with matching, and then
Who is that person?
I'm not going to call out one of our participants.
Okay.
I'm just going to let that.
Good job. Who else? What else do you have?
I've also got a profit sharing plan, and I've got a 401k as an answer.
Okay.
So we're starting to see here some participation. So appreciate it.
I love it. And you guys are absolutely right. The 401k is the ticket. And let's talk about how that works. Not so sure a match is necessary. Couldn't hurt, but you can do mostly everything you need to do in an owner-only situation with simply the profit sharing piece and the salary deferral piece. But remember, Vera switched to an S corporation, and Vera this year is going to have $175,000 to work with. So let's look at two situations based on the level of W-2. Let's assume first that Vera pays out a W-2 salary of $50,000, all right, and takes the remainder of $125,000 as a dividend. All right. A 401k plan would allow Vera, and remember what a 401k plan is, folks. A 401k plan is a profit sharing plan that allows employees to make voluntary salary deferrals into the plan. Vera is an owner, and Vera is also an employee. So this is Vera, the employee, taking $19,500 off the top of the W-2 before taxes as a voluntary deferral. All right, Vera can do that. And then Vera, the owner, Vera, the employer, can put 25% of the W-2 into the plan as a profit sharing contribution. Add those two up, that comes to $32,000. That's not horrible, all right? That's better than a sharp stick in the eye. But, oh, and remember this, 19.5, that comes off the top of the 50,000. So remember, salary deferrals reduce take-home pay, all right? So I'm showing you the maximum there. Vera might not do that, all right? But in any event, consider spending the $175,000 in a different way, or paying it out in a different way. Consider a W-2 of $132,000 and then a dividend for the remainder of $43,000, all right? Consider that situation. Now Vera can still do the same $19,500 off the top of the $132,000 W-2, but now the profit sharing contribution becomes 25% of $132,000 versus 25% of 50. So that's a $33,000 nugget, getting Vera up to $52,500. That's not $58,000, but it's sure a heck of a lot closer than before. So this is the kind of decision making that the owner only in a 401k plan will go through. All right, 401k plan, ultimate flexibility for the S corp owner only situation, and exactly why. The ability to balance the W-2 and the dividend to find out, to find that sweet spot that the employer, the owner wants to be in. Okay, but time goes on, and here we go. In the blink of 2 slides, Vera is now 45 years old, still an S corporation. All right, Vera adopted that 401k profit sharing plan 5 years ago. All right, still keeps earning more, in business for 15 years now, and finally she's gonna take that next super jump in income. Vera expects $350,000 in earnings for 2021. Still an S corporation, still has the flexibility to vary W-2 and dividend as needed, but over the last, now we're at this point in the future, as we look back over her average W-2, we see Vera's paid out an average W-2 of $75,000. So I'm going to stop right there. Based on that little bullet right there, follow the green arrow, 3-year average of W-2, you have a significant piece of information, okay? Because you now know that Vera went the lower W-2 route in the 401k. Remember, she was inching along at 50,000, and then the 175 came into play, and there was a balancing act. How much should go on W-2 versus how much should be a dividend? Vera chose the $75,000 W-2 route and contributed as much as possible accordingly. But 45, $350,000 earnings for 2021, Vera's confidence is high. Vera's confidence is strong. Vera's prepared to make an increased funding commitment. All right. And Vera tells you, if I could do $100,000 a year from now until I'm in my 60s, that would be great. And I would do that. I don't think things are going to slow down. I am so confident right now. I'm prepared to do that. What do you got? Vera is ready for the pension discussion. All right, we're going to switch gears now from a primarily DC arrangements to primarily defined benefit arrangements. And we're going to show you how powerful defined benefit plans can be in owner-only situations. But when you talk defined benefit plans, it is so huge important to have the pension discussion with your prospect. You do not want to sell or attempt to discuss defined benefit plans with clients and prospects unless they are prepared to tell you how much and for how long. All right, pensions are a commitment. Pensions can be hugely successful and wonderful things, but they need to be understood up front. And the pension discussion, that funding objective, has to be determined at the outset. But we can use a pension for Vera at age 45. It can be a cash balance plan. It can be a traditional DB plan. And we can recognize the fact that she's got at least 5 years of prior service. We can use the fact that Vera's got the ability now to pay out a W-2 going forward in future years of $230,000 a year. And we can put together a DB plan that allows Vera to fund $113,000 a year for 18 years at age 45. All right. And don't forget, Vera still got the 401k. Vera can still do $19,500 in salary deferrals. Vera can also put profit sharing of $13,800 in. Since that last chat went so well, I'm going to ask a question here. This is going to be a tough question. If I have a superstar in the audience that answers this question, I'm going to be really happy. But notice this. This profit sharing contribution of $13,800 is only 6% of the W-2 of 230. Why is that profit sharing contribution limited to 6% of pay? Does anybody know the answer to that? Anything, Chris?
Yeah, as I mentioned, I've got one answer coming in here and it says cross-testing.
No, es incorrecto.
Anybody else want to venture a guess in their question? Because of the high salary deferral came in next, which is, I think, on the right track.
Okay. You want to go one more, or should I give up the goods?
I think you should give up the goods. Just let it go.
Okay. The answer is the dual plan deductible limit. Sometimes, in fact, many times, when there's a DB and DB plan, excuse me, DC and DB plan combination sponsored by a business, sometimes, many times, the profit sharing piece is limited to 6% of pay. It's actually a lot more complicated than that, but for your intents and purposes, it's important to remember that piece. All right. We're on the notion of DB plans. How did I come up with the $113,000 for 18 years? Well, I used the chart that we gave in the last session, the chart of multipliers that you can use in situations to approximate for clients and prospects what they might be able to do in a DB plan. This chart assumes at least 5 years of prior service, all right, and at least a 3-year prior average net earned income of $50,000. If you've got those two things, then you can go, for example, to your 55-year-old prospect, and you just move across the chart here to 91%. If your 55-year-old prospect has projected average, not the past average, but in the future is going to earn $115,000 a year, you can tell that prospect 115 times 91%, roughly $105,000 a year for 11 years. Okay. You can use the chart to do exactly that. And you can interpolate. In other words, if you've got a 47-year-old, then you can take 2/5 of the distance between 49 and 78 and use that percent to work with your 47-year-old. So, we're givers, so you can print this up later or refer back to it. It's a handy little device to have. So I want to move on now and talk more about the wonderful DB plans, but we're going to leave Vera. We've tortured Vera. We've taken her, we've aged her 15 years in the span of minutes. So we're going to give her a break, and we're going to switch up. I'm still talking cash balance and DB plans now, but we're going to switch up to a new example called the side hustle. And we're going to introduce to you prudence. And we're going to show you that no matter what the income is, all right, if it's greater than the $58,000 DC minimum, if you've got the age and the service, or excuse me, if you've got the service and the historical compensation, a DB plan will work at any income level. And here's exactly what we mean by that. Prudence is gainfully employed. 50 years old, works as an engineer. Prudence's employer sponsors a 401k plan in which Prudence participates. All right. Prudence also moonlights. Professional board member. Been doing it for quite a while now, has a 3-year net earned income average of $75,000 and expects that to keep going for the foreseeable future. Prudence does not need the money. Prudence does not need the taxes. How can prudence offset the taxable offset the taxable impact of the side hustle income? I'm throwing that out there for you guys to ponder. Give me your answers in a chat. I'm going to give you a hint. Prudence's extra income is consistently $75K a year. She doesn't need any of it. That's my first hint. My second hint is that 75,000 is greater than 58. And my third hint is, I told you we were going to stay on a certain plan type for the rest of the slides. So the answer should be pretty easy. Do we have one, Chris?
Yes, we do. I think someone nailed it with defined benefit plan. We got a few people answering that here at this point.
That is correct. Prudence can adopt a single defined benefit plan. All right. And recognizing that Prudence historical average net earned income and her projected future net earned income equals $75,000. We can write a defined benefit plan that funds a liability or funds for a liability of just over $1 million at Prudence's age 62. The multiplier, Prudence was 50. The multiplier from the chart was 78%, 75,000 times 78%. That gets Prudence about $58,500 a year for 13 years. All right. But Prudence's nugget is $75,000. Are there alternative funding plans? Absolutely. Absolutely. We can accumulate $1.8 million. We can accumulate $1 million, assuming 5% in a number of different ways. We can do it over 10 years at $71,000 a year. And that's right where Prudence needs to be. It's right where Prudence wants to be. And you helped Prudence do that with a single defined benefit plan. Should I advance my notes here? So I'm going to move onward to our next defined benefit plan example, and that is called the One Hit Wonder. I'm going to introduce Maxwell to you. Maxwell is 57 years old. He's been a successful songwriter for 15 plus years, has solid net earned income and service history, earning royalties, project work, jingles, all that cool stuff that songwriters do. Maxwell's prior 3-year net earned income average and projected future average, the same $275,000. Maxwell is just very successful. $275,000 a year. Not going to stop. Did it. Going to keep doing it. But this year, Maxwell pens a doozy. All right. Maxwell writes a hit song, gets a one-time payment of $300,000 in 2021, in addition to his earned income, whatever he pays himself, however he pays himself, $275,000 in addition to, on top of his taxable net earned income. Ouch, with a capital OW. What can Maxwell do? You said it, a defined benefit plan. We can set up a defined benefit plan for Maxwell with a one-time contribution, okay, a one-time contribution of $300,000. We would target a lump sum benefit, benefit payment of almost $370,000 at age 62. And at 5%, that $300,000 would grow to roughly $384,000. All right. So there's plenty of room for Maxwell to increase benefits if earnings are too strong, like well in excess of 5%. But basically what we've done here at $383,000, Maxwell's got plenty of room to handle plan expenses like the actuary, the TPA firm, filing forms, and that kind of thing. Plenty of room here, but only one contribution, one and done, one hit wonder. Maxwell can offset that one-time surge in income with a DB plan. And Maxwell can fund a 401k, $26,000 in salary deferrals. Why 26 and not 19.5? Because Maxwell's over age 50. Okay. And that's another $6,500 in catch up that can be thrown in the pot. $16,500 represents actually 6% of Maxwell's income. Well, total in terms of DB and DC, or defined benefit and 401k, $342,000. And in years 2022 plus, Maxwell can keep funding the 401k up to $26,000 in salary deferrals and up to $38,500 in profit sharing each and every year. You did that with just one DB plan. You did all that with just one DB plan. That is some real power. And I think, Chris, it's time for our second polling question.
That's correct. So do you know anyone who is employed full-time but has another source of earned income? So in my experience, I've also, with advisors that I've worked with over the years, I've seen tenured professors with consulting businesses on the side use this type of vehicle to defer some of their income that they don't need. I've also seen physicians who, maybe have a full-time practice or, work in a hospital, but have some side consulting with a, medical device or a drug company. That's another popular scenario where this type of design might come into play. You may have folks like that in your book of business currently or prospects. Let's see what our polling results give us. So it looks like it's an overwhelming majority of folks here do have someone like this. So there's obviously a lot of great plan designs and flexibility for people who have a side hustle like this, where, a defined benefit plan might be a good bolt-on, or a 401k profit sharing. But I'll kick it back to you, James, to continue.
Thank you, my friend. Okay, so we're done with Maxwell. Oh, hang on, got a problem. Fixed it. Okay, this is our last example. I know it's sad. Fear not, though, I shall return. But this example is, in my opinion, the most compelling example of the power of a defined benefit plan, cash balance, traditional, whatever you choose to do, either one will work. And to illustrate that, we turn to an example called Oars Out. And this features our character, if you will, McGill, 65 years old. Not quite sure what McGill does, architect maybe, something like that, something professional. But after 25 years, still growing strong in the business, healthy, strong, no issues. Average net earned income is over $300,000. That's historical and projected. McGill is just a dynamo, very successful. As I mentioned, McGill's 65 years old, still going strong, but by age 70, McGill would like to take the oars out and just sort of rest on the laurels and look down, survey the empire, and enjoy the ride out. McGill and spouse own their own home. They have sufficient assets, but McGill's spouse needs some limited special care due to an accident. All right. McGill wonders, what happens if I die first during retirement? All right. Is there a way for me to devote my next 5 income producing years to guaranteeing a baseline income for both myself and my spouse? How can I do that? Answer, you guessed it, a defined benefit plan. But we're going to pull out the stops here, and I'm going to talk you through some pretty complex stuff. We'll spend some time on this slide before we finish it out. And here's a little bit about what we're doing here. Yes, we can fix this. We can do this for McGill. We can set up a pension for McGill, and we do it thusly. When a pension allows for a lump sum distribution at retirement, in other words, if you want the business owner to be able to fund a pension and then take a lump sum at the retirement age and roll that lump sum out to an annuity, out to an IRA, that pension is required to base that lump sum value on the value of a life-only annuity. Okay, advisors, put your annuity hats now. Okay, we're in annuity world here. A life-only annuity. If you take away the ability of the plan to pay a lump sum by just eliminating lump sums, you don't have to fund for a life-only annuity. You can fund for a more expensive annuity. You can fund for what they call a joint and 100% contingent life annuity. All right. So in this situation, there's no lump sum coming out of the plan to an IRA. There's just an annuitized stream of income. When you fund for that more expensive joint and contingent annuity, two people is more expensive to fund than one person, very simplistically. All right. When you fund for a joint annuity, the contributions required to do that are much greater than funding for a single life annuity. I'm sure you can imagine that. And in this case, we can set up a pension for McGill to fund $280,000 a year for the next 5 years. What happens? Well, the lump sum, I know I'm saying the lump sum, but it can't be distributed, all right? The lump sum required to pay out that joint and 100% contingent annuity is going to be about $1.5 million. $280,000 a year for 5 years at 5% is going to grow to roughly $1.5 plus million. All right. And in 5 years, that plan will begin making payments to McGill of roughly $9,000 per month. McGill will have some choices to make. He can take those payments in a couple of ways. Number one, he can use the excess assets in the plan to continue paying the actuary to continue processing the payments and valuing the plan every year and filing the 5,500. Alternatively, McGill can use the excess assets to do a structured settlement. I mean, if you think about a structured settlement now with interest rates so low, you're going to need a lot more money than the plan's assumptions, the lump sum calculated at the plan's assumptions. Okay, so, there's some flexibility here. Let's say McGill predeceases spouse during retirement. That $9,000 monthly payment continues to spouse, and spouse has the very same options. Spouse can continue paying the actuary for servicing the plan and maintaining the annuity stream and doing all the work. Continue paying that, or still again, if you want to just tell the actuary to pack it up and you want to sell that liability out to a structured settlement, you can do that too. And there's even room to increase benefits if assets have grown at too strong a clip. So there you go. That, in my mind, that's like that. What we just did there is like insurance. It's like an annuity without the insurance company. That's what that, obviously the structured settlement is probably going to be an insurance company. So for a little while anyway, it's an annuity without the insurance company. That to me illustrates, just the off the charts power of a single defined benefit plan, what it can do. As I say, that is our last example today. I'm going to turn it over to Chris. Gang, I'm looking forward to some great questions. I've been Espo. You guys have been awesome. Chris, do we have questions?
Yep. I think we're going to cover the final polling question first before we go to questions, and then
my fault.
It's okay. So if you were paying attention, the last question, hopefully this is a layup given the choices. How many Beatles references did you witness in this session? I think it's pretty obvious from what we've laid out there, but we'll share the answers with you a minute before we go to questions. I think we can go ahead and close that poll out. All right. 3.14. I like that. Very good. All right, we could go to the next slide and we'll we'll see the answers here while I queue up some of these questions.
I had a fourth choice, all of the above. What happened to my fourth choice?
But yeah, on the next slide, you'll be able to see all the answers. But that does again conclude our formal remarks. So we will go to questions now. So we'd love to answer any questions that you have with the time that we have left. And as a reminder, we encourage you to continue submitting your questions throughout the Q&A on the bottom right of your screen. And so we will get started with our first question, and I'll field others as they continue to flow in. The first one is my client is a father-son firm. Is this an owner-only business?
As long as the son is over the age of majority in whatever state they reside, and as long as the son is shares ownership, then yes, that's an owner-only business. So the point there is that ownership attributes to lineal descendants and ascendants. So grandparents, it goes up the ladder to an owner's parents, and it goes down the ladder to an owner's offspring.
Okay, and I've got another one coming in here. I have a strong center of influence relationship with a workers' comp attorney. He often gives referrals to clients that have won six-figure settlements. They don't have their own business entity and typically don't have meaningful savings. Would they qualify as a one-hit wonder, to use the example you laid out?
Probably not. Probably not. You need earned income to make that work. So, you need a business, and you need service for yourself, and you need earned income. So, in that situation, in all likelihood, not.
Okay. And next, what happens if you start an owner-only plan and then you hire an employee that is not an owner?
It happens. You make sure you have a good plan designer to put provisions in the document to cope with that particular eventuality. In terms of what it's going to cost the employer, minimum 3%. So if that happens and you didn't address the plan, in all likelihood, you're probably in a DC plan anyway. You're in all likelihood going to have to pony up at least 3% for that employee when eligible. Not a deal breaker, doesn't kill things for the owner. And you just have to know about it ahead of time. So that's why it's really important to understand your owner-only clients, really important to understand from a plan design perspective what they're likely to do. And that's a question that you want to condition yourself to ask. You're an owner-only, you're a maverick, but is there ever a chance that you would ever hire somebody to help? If so, then you need to let me know before you do that. Always condition the employer for that kind of thing. And that's where the relationship with the actuary is so important when you're doing DB plans, for example, or the TPA when you're doing DC plans. Because if the TPA is doing the job, the actuary is doing the job, there's rapport. There's a good, strong relationship. And just like the CPA, that business owner doesn't make a move until they call you, their advisors, their CPA, and their TPA, and obviously the financial advisor. So I hope that answers that question.
Okay, I've got another one coming in. If my client just started working a side hustle and they don't need the income, can they still start a DB plan even though they don't have a history of earned income yet?
Yes. I may not be able to generate the size contribution that we did for Prudence because we were able to recognize past service. And we can that helps. Juice contributions. Sorry for using that word juice, but it helps increase contributions. But if not, there may be enough income to make it work anyway. There might be enough future income, future average projected income to make it work. So yes, the answer is get the information and get to bring us some information. We'll do some numbers for you, tell you if it's worthwhile.
Okay. The next one, I've got a husband and wife that own a business, and they just have IRAs right now currently. What kind of plan would potentially be best for them?
Well, use those income ranges that we discussed in the last session. But if the income's, low, I don't like to use that word low, but if the income is encumbered, in other words, they need a lot of it, then you want to stay flexible. SEP and a profit sharing plan, you can set those up and you can roll those IRA assets into the SEP or profit sharing plan. That would be a discretionary arrangement. And if it's a situation where the projected earnings are going to be strong and the owner's got some confidence, high confidence, and they're willing to make a kind of commitment, then and only then, I think, is a DB plan something to talk about. But qualified plans, especially for startup situations, you want to walk before you can run. So if you can, the Vera example really gives you a great idea of the progression from SEP and why the 401k came into the picture. I didn't really talk too much about why profit sharing versus SEP, but you see as the income changes and the corporate structure changes, how you can take advantage of different plan types. So it's hard to say without knowing a little bit more in terms of the projected income and the consistency thereof. But you start with SEP and profit sharing, and if that's not enough, you go to more complex designs. Just get the data, give some approximations if you're comfortable, but if you're not comfortable using the rules of thumb to give approximations, then just don't. Just, hey, get the data. Let me get the data, okay, and I'll be back. Let me tell you something. Most business owners, if the financial advisor came in and that was all they said, most business owners would be ecstatic to work with you, number one. And number two, they'll give you the information just to see if you'll read it. So that's a real opportunity. So just get the information and talk to us about it, and we'll see if we can put something on the back of an envelope and show the employer what's possible, and get an idea whether or not they would like to know more.
Very good. Does an owner-only business require an ERISA surety bond?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Ooh,
So
okay.
you're talking about, most employers get, most employers get a $500,000 bond to start, and that's about $500,000. That's about $500. And you can do that through a property casualty agent. The business may already have it. A lot of times they're included in a lot of PC packages. But certainly when there are employees involved, you definitely need that surety bond. They never hurt. So $500 for the surety bond, roughly.
Okay. And then it seems like almost a follow on to the previous question. And I don't think we covered this, but it might be worth spending a couple minutes on. Could the husband and wife situation we described before, would they be able to do solo Ks? And maybe briefly talk through that a little bit if it's beyond the scope. We can follow up with this person, but I thought that was an interesting question.
Yeah, they would do one. So are they the same business? Can you tell?
Yeah, that's my understanding that they're a husband and wife team in the same business.
Then you would only really have to do one 401k plan for the two owners.
Okay.
But certainly, yeah, absolutely. Owner only 401k plans, and many TPAs offer owner only fee schedules that are, much reduced from situations with employees. So absolutely, owner only 401k, solo K, uni K, all those things. 401k, absolutely. 401, yay. Sorry.
Okay, and then I've got another one here. So it's a situation. If you had 3 to 5 employees, can you use and I'm not sure what this means, but you may know, an SS integration formula to limit contributions to lower paid employees? I believe.
Well, you wouldn't use it to lower contributions to lower paid employees. You would use it to increase contributions to higher paid employees. And the answer is yes. SSI, I think, is abbreviation for Social Security integration. That is a safe harbor allocation method. And simplistically speaking, that's just a way of recognizing that people who earn over the taxable wage base don't get to put as much into the Social Security system as people who earn up to the taxable wage base. So they don't get as much out of Social Security in relation to their overall income, and the allocation method allows a couple extra percent allocation to the individuals, and it's typically the owners that earn over the wage base. The wage base this year is about $137,700. I think that's the wage base there. So any compensation that the owner earns over $137,000 doesn't get taxed for Social Security. They don't put anything into Social Security on that. So the IRS allows the plan allocation to compensate the owner for that lost opportunity, as it were. But yes, you can use integrated. Integration's an old beast. I'm much more a fan of new comparability than I am of integration. So if you do have a design situation, we can show them side by side and why you might want new comp versus integration, but it's certainly possible.
Okay, great. That's all the time we have today for questions. If we didn't get to your question, we'll be sure to follow up with you after the presentation. As a reminder, for your convenience, a recording of this webinar will be emailed to you directly within the next several business days. Please feel free to continue to reach out with any questions or follow-up that you may have. You'll also receive a post webinar survey. And for those of you seeking CFP credit, this is eligible for 1 hour of that credit, and that will be included in the survey you receive. So please do open that if that's something you're interested in. And James, thank you for your time, and thank you listeners for joining us, and take care and be well. And we hope you have a great week.